Welcome to my paradise. Today we're going to talk about trust building exercises again and how to possibly build trust in a relationship when there isn't any to begin with, okay? Very often when we're young, as I mentioned in an earlier video, when we're young, we're satisfied to just have a relationship. So we kind of take one just because the other person said they cared about us or liked us or thought we were attractive. And so you kind of rush into it and you get yourself into this relationship. But over time, that need for reinforcement and emotional trust and support overtakes us because we are human and that's what we want to be acknowledged. So let's talk about this. How do we build essential trust skills in persons who don't have any emotional perception or interpretation of events the way we like? Okay, this is what's very important. Trust is essential to all relationships. And obviously, the more trust you have in each other, the more fulfilled you feel along the way. The more responsive each other is towards the other one's issues or problems. Having trust issues often bring about fear in the other party, a feeling of disappointment, a feeling of mistrust for divulging anything that might go wrong. And over time, cements a relationship where there's like an empty void between you. You each go through your functional duties as a partner, but maintain the household, go shopping, get together, see the family on the weekends or however you work it. And then all of that is like mechanically done. And emotionally, you know better, you're just not going to speak out your mind. That happens, but that's not necessarily a great relationship because the human spirit takes over. The human spirit thrives on acknowledgement, identification, a sense of belonging with the other person, and you feel closer the more you can have emotional intimacy. Now, conversely, until you mature, you're not even capable of expressing your own emotions. So if you're very young, this is very difficult for you to express to other people. But over time and maturity, we begin to get our own voice, so to speak. I'm sure you've heard that term before, get your own voice and know who you are. That's a big task. That's a few words, but a big task. Once you get your own self-identity fully developed, you will need somebody who cares. We want somebody to have a sympathetic ear. We want somebody to be compassionate. And also, we observe their actions in it. Do they demonstrate that they're compassionate or have a concern for us? And again, as earlier, you want to be careful not to mix up physical intimacy for emotional intimacy, okay? That seems to be a male-female divide there, where very often a female gets attached more quickly than the male, and the male ends up looking at the relationship as a functional relationship to get needs met versus this emotional bonding that women have this strong need for. That's nothing new. That's across history, and we all are there. Okay, so physical intimacy versus emotional intimacy are two different things. So what happens when your emotional intimacy needs are not met? You become what we call emotionally shut down. You just stop discussing what it is that bothers you because you don't anticipate that your partner is going to give you a satisfactory resolution anyway, or interaction or care. And that's pretty sad because when you're emotionally shut down, you stop interacting in the relationship. And that's how we have these long, if you know, all relationships have peaks and valleys. Well, in this situation, the valley's getting deeper. So you want to be careful to work on this emotional intimacy. Barren folks, those are people who've never had to draw on their emotions. Maybe they had a cold, less interacting family. Maybe they just have been hurt and shut down themselves. But in any case, a person who's emotionally what we call barren doesn't have the basic core of emotional repertoire that we would hope to bring to the conversation. Okay, so what does that mean? So if we are emotionally barren, we just go about our relationship in performing all the functional duties of a relationship. We sleep together, we have sex together, we go to church, maybe we cook dinner together, but in that interaction, there's very little emotional exchange and really getting to know one another. What are the symptoms of somebody who is emotionally depressed or void of emotional satisfaction? Well, certainly breeds ability to feel lonely, sometimes get very anxious because you have all these things on your mind and there's nobody to discuss them with, to interact with. And then again, it could lead to such severe that it's outright depression. So you go from being lonely to being withdrawn to getting further depressed. And the next thing you know, you hate the relationship and you want to leave. And the other party says, well, I didn't even know she was unhappy. What are you talking about? So the truth is a lot of it is up to us to express ourselves correctly and what we need. What are signs that your partner is empathetic or has the ability to share emotional trust with you? Well, one, do they listen when you're discussing things that bother you? Are they focused on what your conversation is about through that time? And do they have the facial expressions match what the topic is? So if you're crying in one corner and saying you're very upset about something, do they kind of laugh and joke and say, oh, there you go again. Ha, 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 ha. And of course, you're hurt because now you just recoil and your emotions are tucked back inside of you again. And another sign is, do they change the topic? Are they like you say, honey, I had a really bad day at work today. And they say, you know, I really need to get the oil changed on that car. Well, they just overrode everything you just said. So your emotions are not acknowledged. So what's the very last worst thing that someone can do when you're bearing your emotional concerns is to outright reject them. Say, oh, are you crazy? That's not true at all. Put that away. How dare you feel that way? And of course, you resent the fact that somebody's telling you how to feel. So between the two of you, the resentment builds harder and harder, and distancing grows between the couple. So what do we want to do? We want to circumvent that. It takes time. And people don't realize when you're building a relationship, you can't just expect all the little P's and Q's to fall in place. Along the way, you have to give your partner a nudge. What is it that you need? What do you need from that partner? You have to express yourself. You say, honey, I really need a hug today. Can you just give me a hug? But instead, if the person rejects your thoughts, immediately you become defensive and then you say, here you go again. Never mind. There's no point in talking to you. But you could have just said, hey, honey, can you give me a hug? Can you give me a little advice here? I need some help. How should I handle this? And you could even compliment them if you need to and say, you know, honey, you handled these things before. I know you know how to handle it. Give me some advice. And that kind of opens the door for a more receptive on both ways, both from you and then allows your partner to answer with a little dignity. So these are things that you need to look at. So you can build trust by expressing yourself properly. You need to have a significant other that watches your back, supports you when you're down, encourages you when you need to be built up, and confirms that your feelings are either right or wrong when you describe a situation that got you down. So what happens if you fall short? What happens if the person doesn't have that automatic empathy or sympathy or understanding to build trust right off the bat? And very often when we're young, not everybody has it. Not everybody has the same level of sensitivity. I think you'll agree with that. For the most part, it does vary across all persons, male or female. But traditionally, the male partner has always gotten the rap of being emotionally stunted or cold or barren because men have a way of compartmentalizing. So they don't dramatize a situation. If they're not happy about something that happened, they don't beat it up and tear it apart and analyze it. Normally, this is not everyone, but for the most part, men are content to just kind of put it away for now and go about a different activity. Whereas women drag it out and want to discuss it and dissect it and talk about it. And men don't always have tolerance for that. But it depends on who you're with. I mean, there's many men, it's the other way around, where the men need the emotional support and the female is cold and barren. And that does happen as well. So sort of your alpha female could make the man feel very rejected and not wanted. So those are things you need to look at. So you need to work on these recommendations to discuss emotional intimacy with your partner. And one of the ways to do it is not necessarily to say, hey, honey, let's talk about emotional intimacy, because that's about going to turn them off as much as you can imagine. Mostly it's about you saying, hi, honey, very easily, can you just give me a hug? Period. Most likely you're going to get it. So please be sure to express yourself as well as what you need, rather than let it build over time where you have an emotional void and it builds and builds and builds, and eventually it becomes this passive aggressive resentment. So that's what you want to avoid. If you have trouble working through some of these exercises, by all means, email me and I'll be happy to send you our treatment recommendation sheet, exercises that you can do at home. And definitely feel free to leave a comment below if you like in the comment section. And by all means, if you do enjoy these videos, would you please subscribe to my channel below? And I wish you all the luck in the world. I'd like to hear from you. So email me at my link below, Felicia@FeliciaFerrara.com. And I will be happy to send you a list of recommendation exercises for building trust between you and your loved one. Now, in the meantime, may you always walk in light. Thank you. Bye now.